So, Opus 4.7 has just dropped. The big daddy is here. Or actually, the big daddy is not yet here. The big daddy is actually Claude Mythos. However, Opus 4.7 is actually quite an interesting release because Opus 4.7 is just a step closer towards Mythos. What they did here is essentially they gave us a watered down version of kind of like Claude Mythos. Because Opus 4.7, I don't know if this is a coincidence or if it was intentional, but Opus 4.7 is just about half the performance of Claude Mythos when it comes to some of the benchmarks. So let's start going through the benchmarks here. So this is Opus 4.7, which dropped a few hours ago. So when it comes to the SWE-bench Pro on agentic coding, Opus 4.7 scored a 64.3%, while Opus 4.6 had a 53.4%. In Claude Mythos preview, it is 77.8%. So this is about just at the halfway point on the way to Mythos in terms of the jump from Opus 4.6 to Mythos preview. It's kind of crazy to think about. It's like the midpoint. It was kind of intentional. Then we have the agentic coding, which is SWE-bench verified. So that's from 80% on Opus 4.6 to 87% on Opus 4.7. And then Mythos is all the way at 93%. Now, these seem sort of like small incremental jumps. So this might seem like something. So these are small incremental jumps. And this might be something where the min-maxers are going to be coming in saying, oh, Opus 4.7 is the greatest thing of all time, yada, 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 yada. I think you know what happens with AI news and all of the exaggerations coming in. Well, I'll just say sort of more straightforward. Opus 4.7 doesn't necessarily unlock any new sort of like capabilities that didn't exist before. Opus 4.7 is more like it just makes it easier. Although, from my own personal usage of Opus 4.7 in the past few hours, there's already something new I've been able to do with Opus 4.7 that I've been sort of working on with 4.6 for weeks now. And it's sort of not been working. It's like an agentic use case. And then with Opus 4.7, it sort of finished off what Opus 4.6 started in 3 prompts. Basically 1, 2, 3 prompts. The issue I was trying to fix for weeks, boom, automation is done. So I'm not sure if that was okay. So I'm not really sure if that was an occurrence of the model sort of like making it easier to do or unlocking a new capability. Of course, with Opus 4.6, I'm pretty sure I would have figured out how to make it work eventually. But Opus 4.7 just made it a lot snappier, a lot quicker. And then when we go to agentic terminal coding, this is where it gets interesting. Now, there are some things where the Opus 4.7 model is actually worse than Opus 4.6. We haven't reached there yet. For agentic terminal coding, it's got a 69%, while Opus 4.6 is at a 65%. It's only a 4% increase. And I think that this is mostly because of the issues that they're having with Claude Mythos, where I think this is mainly because of the issues that they're having with Claude Mythos, where Mythos is so good at hacking and it's compromising everyone. They're really trying to lock that down and prevent that from happening. So they're really limiting the sort of like agentic terminal use where you can write all of the bash commands to take over access of a computer. So that's probably why it's so limited when it comes to agentic terminal coding. With Claude Mythos all the way over there at 82%. Then you've got multidisciplinary reasoning. There it also beats out Claude Opus 46, so that's a 40%. Mythos is over there at a 56 and a 64 with the tools. And then for multidisciplinary reasoning with tools. So for multidisciplinary reasoning with the tools, so Opus 4.7, that's a 58%. Versus a 53%. That's basically a 1% differential, which is basically nothing. And then when you look at agentic search, this is where Opus 4.7 actually gets worse than Opus 4.6. Because for agentic search, it got a 79%, and Opus 4.6 at an 83%, and Mythos preview at an 86%. So the difference isn't massive in terms of the improvement. However, the decrement in Opus 4.7 is something quite interesting. And again, this is probably because of the hacking shit. And quite interestingly enough, Jury 5.4 actually beats out Mythos. It's quite the interesting occurrence. So I wonder if this Mythos preview is going to be the same as the final version of Mythos. We'll just have to see how that ends up playing out. And then for the skill 2 use, that beats out Opus 4.7. Agentic computer use, it also beats out Opus 4.6. Agentic financial analysis. This is interesting. A nice 4.4% above the 60%. And then we've got cybersecurity vulnerability. And then we've got cybersecurity vulnerability reproduction. This is 73.1%, which is actually worse than Opus 4.6, which had a 73.8%. So this is actually worse. Think again, another reason they're trying to limit the model because of the security. Because they're afraid this thing is going to start hacking people way more than it should. they're actually afraid of the misalignment. Then for graduate level reasoning, this thing is just in the top level, beating out most people with master's degrees and PhDs. For GPQA Diamond, it did at 94.2%. So now it's really in the big leagues, like the top 1% of intelligence relative to human beings. So for graduate level reasoning, it had 94.2%, which is actually quite similar to Mythos preview, which is at 94.6%, versus Opus, which is at 91%. This is actually closely tied with GPT 5.4 Pro, which is quite impressive. For visual reasoning, it's also a lot better. So it got an 82% and a 91% for tools, versus the Opus 4.6, which is underperforming. For multilingual Q&A, it's basically the same thing, and they didn't even bother to test Mythos on that, because we're now reaching points where these benchmarks are just getting completely saturated. And then, of course, they did their glasswing thing. Then we've got the knowledge work, of course. Opus 4.7 is at the top. Opus 4.6 is actually at third, followed before. So like following Opus 4.7, we've got GPT 5.4, Opus 4.6, and then in dead last, we've got Gemini 3.1 Pro, which is quite unfortunate because at some point I was actually rooting for Gemini because they subsidize their AI costs massively. And I'm really grateful for that. Extremely grateful, actually. And then now for the misaligned behavior. Opus 4.6 is the most misaligned model out there, followed by Sonnet 4.6, then Sonnet 4.7, and then the most aligned model will be Mythos preview. So here they managed to get Opus to be more aligned than Sonnet 4.6. However, I wonder why they didn't put Haiku. I have a feeling Haiku might actually still be beating Mythos preview because Haiku was the most aligned model ever. Anthropic just cooked when it comes to alignment with the Haiku model. But then for migration from Opus 4.6 to Opus 4.7, that's going to be really easy for you to do because they use all of the same endpoints, basically the same thing. The only changes to the trade-off that you're going to get. For the tokens, there'll be a roughly 1 to 1.3.5x differential, which won't be that big. But something interesting to note that Opus 4.7 uses a lot more tokens than Opus 4.6 when it's at max effort. When it's at lower efforts, like extra high actually uses less effort than the max of Opus 4.6, uses less tokens than that. And it has a higher score as well. When it's on high, it uses even less tokens. It uses less tokens than the previous one. And the score is a lot better, from 50 all the way to 70%. Medium, it's the same situation. And low, it's basically the same situation, using slightly less tokens. Yeah, it's using slightly less tokens for the different agentic performances, okay? The only time that it's actually using more is between extra high and max, like a plateau. And you almost get sort of like a plateau in the performance. Good people, that is it. That is Opus 4.7. If you want to start using these AI models for something that's actually productive in your business, as opposed to this AI hype and garbage on the internet of people talking about, oh, I use my AI for research, useless garbage. If you actually want to use AI to actually automate your business, to automate the back end and the repetitive processes, just go to my website, aloni.cloud, and go to the business section and check out what we can do for you. If you want to use AI for trading, also hit us up. That is one of our specialties. Automation, financial automation, and business automation. Catch you in the next one. Watch the video over there. If you like this video, watch the bloop over there. If you like the video, watch the bloop over there.